I'm the Director of Recruitment at Willamette, and a number of my colleagues are here today to help us greet you at this event and walk us through this event. If you have not been a part of one of our roundtables this year, we've done a number of them, and they have been wonderfully attended by counselors from all over the country. The format really is designed as a roundtable discussion. So the idea is for information sharing. It is not just about us somehow providing content. We will provide a little bit of content at the beginning, some slides and just a bit of information about what we've learned around this topic of helping students choose in this difficult year. And then we will provide a little bit of content at the end as well. But in the middle, the bulk of our time will be spent in smaller breakout rooms where we can have some really hopefully interactive conversations with one another about what you're learning, what you've experienced, and how we can support one another and our students. So we are recording this session with the exception of the times when we are in the breakout rooms. So this beginning part and the end we will record so that we can share, but otherwise we will not be recording during the breakout rooms. So again, thank you for being here. We're going to kick things off. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Claire, who is going to start walking us through our discussion topics.
Yeah, absolutely. So today's discussion, as Sue said, we're going to talk about choosing with confidence. And then the next piece we're going to speak to is 5 reasons plus 1, so a total of 6 if you can do your math there, to choose a small college, especially when we think about the world we're living in right now, the unique world, I should say. We'll look at conversation starters, and that's when we'll go into our breakout rooms for a smaller group discussion, and we'll have some time for you to chat amongst each other. And then we will come back and talk about what we call the Willamette Impact Report, so the opportunities that we are presenting to students right now. So Katie, I'll let you go to the next slide there. And I want to talk about what it means to choose with confidence, right? This is the big question, right, that we see on the screen here. How do you choose with confidence? If it's the right place, right, if you can't physically be on a college campus. And so a couple things that we want to talk about here. We know that there are people who do this all the time, right? Students will make their decisions having not physically been to a campus, and even with less information. And so if you consider our pre-COVID world, there was much less information on virtual programming that was being offered. And I say this right now with complete recognition that this might not be ideal for many students and their parents or guardians, right, to make that decision without it. So we totally get that. And we want people to visit in person. I'm a firm believer personally in that gut reaction, right, when students get to a college campus and how they feel. But right now, due to the safety of our campus community and as well as our visitors, we are limited to what we can say yes to in person. So I guess, dare I say, a perk of our COVID world is this expanded virtual programming, right? Students can meet one-on-one with faculty, they can meet one-on-one with current students, alumni, they can attend a class. What else can they do? They can watch recorded events, right? Even on their own time. And so this access to these campus communities and their people are in some ways stronger virtually than they might have been in person. We know that many colleges, Willamette included, I know that I'm biased, are very aesthetically pleasing and beautiful to be a part of. But really, if you boil it down, it's the connections to the people and the opportunities that are there that are really going to help these students kind of feel secure and confident in their decision making. The people and those opportunities are the pieces that don't change, right? Whether you're in person or virtually. And so if colleges are offering in-person visits, perhaps a combination of both in-person safe tour as well as some virtual programming might be the best option for students. But taking the time to participate in these virtual programs and meet the community at institutions can really help students and families and guardians make this informed decision to feel confident and excited, right? I think that's a piece that I want to hone in on. This is an exciting time for students, and so we shouldn't let this virtual world that they might be having to choose from diminish the fact that this is a really exciting time for all of them. So I'm going to pass it back to Sue here to talk about the exciting things and kind of the perks of small colleges when we think about the unique world we're living in.
Thanks, Claire. So yeah, Willamette is a small college, so we are going to be very open about our our bias at this point in terms of choosing with confidence. Just choosing a college this fall. Claire has outlined some of the ways that folks can do that. We think there are even more reasons why one can choose a small college with particular confidence right now. And some of these are kind of obvious things to all of you, but it's worth restating because of this unusual year that we've been living through. The small class sizes that take place on a small college are, we think there's benefits to that always, but this year, as we have navigated the difficulties of COVID, as we have managed to be in person with about 90% of our courses at Willamette, we have grown to appreciate even more how important it is to have those small cohorts, those small daily classes where students can truly connect with and get to know one another and get to know their faculty. Those low student to faculty ratios that are a part of having those small class sizes mean that students are always able to connect in a meaningful way academically. And that has been really underscored this year during, as we've navigated COVID. Even just the small practicality of moving our classes into spaces that would allow us to continue to meet at a safe distance, socially distanced within our classroom spaces. That has been doable at Willamette really pretty seamlessly because the classes themselves don't have that many people, and to be able to spread those people out is doable. So those small class sizes, small faculty to student ratio have really been underscored as important factors for Willamette this year. I think just understanding the unique academic programs that are in place at a place like Willamette and at other peer small institutions where there are unique opportunities to do a dual degree. There are increasing programs like this at Willamette where you can combine your bachelor's degree with your master's degree, your doctorate degree, lots of opportunities to do more in a shorter amount of time because of unique relationships that are forming. Willamette has a number of these programs that we are so excited about. And so again, another reason for students to look to this type of education. I think we know at Willamette always that we see our students navigating a really rigorous curriculum here, and yet doing so in an atmosphere that is far more collaborative than it is competitive. They're coming into an overall community that is about involvement and collaboration rather than working against one another. And I think given what our students have navigated, this particular group of seniors this year, given what they have navigated academically, the stress on their minds, the stress on just their families in terms of trying to prepare for college in this past year, I think coming into an environment that is supportive and collaborative academically is really, really important for a lot of young people. So we're excited about what we can offer them. And then of course, at a small place like Willamette, career conversations, internship opportunities, these are abundant and they happen very personally because of the number of students that our Career Center has to serve. It's just smaller. And so they are able to work so individually with students about helping determine a career path, helping them understand if one of those dual degree options is the right path for them, helping connect them with internship opportunities. Even when we're virtual, we've been seeing students do some really interesting internship opportunities. So again, it's that personal nature of that next step piece that I think can happen at a small place in a really meaningful way. And then of course the bonus, just that many small colleges like Willamette, and as I've already mentioned, we've been learning in person during the pandemic. And I think there's been quite a bit of press that has underscored that we have been able to do that really successfely. A lot of places tried to be in person and it didn't work successfully, but I think in a smaller community, we have been able to demonstrate that we we could make that work. We had virtually no community spread at Willamette. We had a couple of cases of COVID, but they weren't spread within the community. And so we feel really proud of the way we've been able to pivot and deliver education in this challenging time. So,
but we wanted to wrap up today's program by bringing it back to Willamette, of course, and talking a little bit about what we have done in our admission office and the successes that we have seen on our campus. So what we're calling our Willamette Impact Report. For the sake of time, I'm going to focus specifically on our approach to pivoting our admitted student programming to a virtual format. Obviously, there's a lot going on, not directed towards our admitted students, but since the session is all about choosing with confidence, then we're going to focus on those admitted students that are having to make that choice. We have traditionally at Willamette had a 2-day admitted student program called Bearcat Days. That is, I mean, really no joke, the pride and joy of what we do. We love it. We put a ton of effort into it. Our campus community is involved, and it's what you think of, right, of those admitted student events, and we see and have seen in the past the great attendance rate that you would hope for from admitted students at these Bearcat Days. In thinking about how to pivot to virtual space, we knew that we couldn't, one, do the same format. No one's going to sit on Zoom for 2 whole days. And 2, had the opportunity to really be innovative now and do some things with our programming that you couldn't do in those 2 days on campus. So we broke out the 2 days into a lot of different smaller and shorter and programs based off of hierarchy. So the general information that students should have about Willamette into specific information, and then like super duper specific information. And all of those programs are offered multiple times throughout the spring so that students can fit in what they are looking for the most at the time that fits them the best. Again, our schedules, everyone knows, are just insane, and being able to reach students when it is most comfortable for them was really important to us in planning this programming. One example of innovative programming that we've added to our calendar and seen a lot of success from is what we're calling Next Steps sessions. These sessions happen a few days after we release admissions decisions to really capture that excitement, you know, sending out that yay message to students, and then gathering them in a short, like no more than 1 hour virtual session to celebrate with them, but also then help them navigate all of that virtual programming that's going to slam their inboxes over the next few weeks, and ensure that they know that we are here to support them through navigating all of those options and choosing Willamette, hopefully with confidence. I think another really huge benefit of what we have done and how successful we have been thus far this spring is trying to stay positive and turning lemons into lemonade. We have seen a lot of really great wins with our virtual programming so far. Being able to incorporate current students in more ways than we have in the past. They are part of every single program, no matter what, that we run. We put current students in front of those admitted students. Being able to reach more people through the chat function in Zoom and virtual formats. So many times, I think we lose the opportunity to answer questions or provide specific information to people in person because they get lost in the crowd or might not just have the confidence or comfortability to ask that question out loud in a group setting. But the chat has just blown up for us. And so we've really worked to put the support behind the chat box and answering questions as they come in that space. And then we have seen wins in just the feedback that we're getting, right? We ask in surveys, as you do, how student experience was at all of these different virtual events. And no less than 95% of students have responded that they felt welcomed, connected to the Willamette community after these virtual events. And then I'll just leave you with this quote that I pulled from one of those surveys. I was really struck by how much support I felt during the event, even through a screen. So again, trying to find those silver linings, knowing that we all have extreme Zoom fatigue and can't possibly imagine how our students are feeling if we're feeling this way, but also recognizing the wins, drinking in the lemonade, and having optimism that this is going to work for us. So that's my quick little rundown of the admission virtual programming side of things. And I'm going to let Justin talk a little bit about campus community. What are the wins that we've seen this spring?
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. And for folks that I haven't met yet, my name is Justin Strohmeyer, Senior Associate Director. And as Caitlin mentioned, really using this as a time to celebrate some of this year's wins has been fun because there is so much bogging us down. But looking at the way that the Willamette community really rallied to make this year successful is a really special showcase of just the power that this community has. As you heard earlier from Sue, because we've been able to offer in-person learning throughout the school year, in many ways, the academic experience is what was likely the least impacted for our students because our class sizes and the one-to-one connections that students feel in their academic experience are already so strong that adapting to new protocols and new virtual interactions and things like that was actually not that heavy a lift for our community. Now, of course, the university initially had to step up and make the proper investment into the safety protocols and equipment and all of the kind of retrofitting and accommodations that were required to create safe classroom spaces. But ultimately, it's the students that have led the charge in this process, and the way that they took what was asked of them and even took it a step further and really had that peer-to-peer accountability is just one more thing that we can be really proud of in this year, because without the students, we have learned so much through their dedication to this process. I think one thing that really is a special highlight of how these outcomes are really being translated this year is looking at one of our big events that we do each spring for current students to showcase their original research. This big research symposium that happens in the spring, this year actually has twice as many submissions as would happen in a typical year. So not only are students having these amazing classroom experiences, but that research and experiential learning that's really at the core of the Willamette experience is showing itself in a stronger way than we ever could have imagined. And I think that is really attributed to those tight relationships that students have with their professors and that opportunity to take their classroom learning to the next level and really make an impact in their individual fields. On the student life side of things, we were able to pivot and allow students a lot more social distancing in their residence halls and in the dining halls and things like that, while still allowing them to have the community building that is such an important part of the student experience. Our Willamette Events Board has done some amazing programming throughout the year, both in terms of entertainment and in education and just in community building. That even in a virtual realm, what would typically be these large gatherings for, performances and things like that have been able to adapt to Zoom and still create this bond from students to their peers. Our community service learning department has continued to offer service to the Salem community, mainly through outdoor projects, and kind of service to go options that students were able to elect to participate in, really focusing on area organizations where they could make the largest impact. Our outdoor program has stayed active, doing small outdoor excursions, typically within walking distance of campus, taking advantage of just the beautiful natural landscape that we have around us, and still building that connection to the local community through our outdoor activities. And student organizations have continued to have their interactions via Zoom, including fraternities and sororities, doing their chapter meetings, their philanthropies to raise money for local organizations. All of that has adapted to Zoom very successfully. Our student newspaper has shifted to a totally digital format. So rather than us stopping each day to pick up the paper as we're grabbing a cup of coffee, it is now in our inbox every day. And so students that are involved in journalism are still able to publish the stories that they're passionate about and share them with the rest of the Willamette community. And our student activities department is doing a weekly online program called Willamette Wednesdays, where faculty, staff, and students can offer a program on a topic of their choosing. And the latest one was about how to ferment vegetables. I mean, it's a chance to share with the Willamette community just those unique stories and unique learning opportunities that ultimately help to further build community. One thing that has been really interesting for me to witness firsthand, I work very closely with student athletes, and so I've been really attuned to the way that they have had to adapt in this year. And all 19 of our varsity sports have had some kind of team training, and ultimately for our spring athletes, they are right at the start of competition. And so they're training throughout the year. They're able to now have that outlet of competing within our conference. And at least returning to that some semblance of normalcy on their athletic teams. Also looking at the way that the teams have done workouts virtually, even doing training via Zoom, as well as, especially for our first year student athletes, being able to build a bond with their teammates, seeing the way that coaches have helped to facilitate some of these really creative gatherings for student athletes, and for the first year students to build that connection has been really wonderful to see. And then also the way that our athletes really try to contribute to the community through service as well. They were able to do a food drive for a local elementary school, and then a handful of folks that were masked and distanced ultimately got to deliver that food to folks at the elementary school. And they also did a really cool video project for an elementary school for their PE classes, trying to highlight the National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and seeing the way that female student athletes helped to compile this video in collaboration with folks at the elementary school, and then ultimately to share it with the students at the elementary school is just one of the cool examples of the way that our student athletes have stayed really dedicated to service in our local community. So that was a lot of info I threw at you, but I think that it's an exciting opportunity again to celebrate the way that the Willamette community and the bond that we share has not been interrupted. It's simply adapted to the new normal, and has remained at the core of each student's experience.
Thanks, Justin and Caitlin, for all of that great information about Willamette and how this year has looked for us. We realize we have bumped up against our maximum time here in terms of what we had planned for you. We are so grateful that so many of you took the opportunity to join us today. We know that many of you are rushing off to other appointments, and that is just fine. Please feel free to go. For those who have follow-up questions, some of our staff will stay here in the meeting and are happy to continue to talk for a little bit for those who'd like to stay.